Hey, welcome to today's Smarketing Show. We got a really unique guest today, a guy that normally does the interviewing, but we're going to interview you today, Andy Slawetsky. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Great seeing you. Thanks for having me on here, Rick. How are you, Aaron?
Hey, I'm doing well, Andy. Thanks for making the time. I love the opportunity to interview you and get your perspective. It's nice to have you on the other side of the fence.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to let you guys do all the work.
Well, we want you to do the work today, buddy. You normally throw the questions. We're going to be hitting you. And Aaron and I were really interested in your perspective, to be honest, because I don't know if there's an event that we don't see your hats at, but you're one of the best marketers of your brand and the what's happening and all that stuff. And we follow all the content you put out. We just spoke for this interview about one of your recent interviews, but we want to kind of drill on in your perspective objectively, and please be open with our audience on what you see. But recently Aaron and I, were partnering on kind of a sales and marketing fit, but we wanted you to kind of be unbridled in your speak about what you see as best practices and opportunities, really, because collectively you want to help dealers win and the OEMs win and distributors win. And I know you're a sales guy, and I know why you didn't make it to be a professional golfer, having golf with you at the ECS tournament.
I need a little work.
Yeah, I think I was in your bag for balls towards the end there.
You might have been. It was a tough day. We lost a lot of balls. Who would lose that many balls in the desert in the water, right?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, Aaron, why don't you ask him the first question, and I'll throw him on the hot seat next.
All right.
Okay, so just thinking, Andy, sales and marketing, you travel around, you go to a lot of kickoffs, a lot of different events. Like what's your perspective when you think about our industry and our community when it comes to sales and marketing? Who's doing it well, who's not? What's your kind of overview and thoughts on that? Because in my world, I often see that people are looking at sales as one thing and marketing is another, but they never really typically put it together. But maybe you see it differently.
I don't know. I think we have a lot of good sales forces in our industry. I think the marketing is spotty. It is, and and it just comes from the growth of these dealers. I think they supported a lot of it in the past as they grew, and they had somebody who was capable of it. But as a, you know, 1 million, 2 million, $5 million company gets into that 10, 15, $20 million range, you've got a whole host of, different issues, different marketing needs, and it's a different level. And that person who may have gotten you to that point earlier, may be up against a wall and not know where to go from there. Not and may need help, or just it might just be time for you to take that step and bring on talent at a different level, right?
Yeah. Do you think that maybe too it has something to do with just the complexity of marketing has changed so much? Now, 3 years ago there was no chat GPT, right? And all of a sudden now we're in the age of AI and these things are getting a lot more complex. Like, how do you think that impacts their ability to kind of build a robust marketing program and
Well, big
support that sales
Big
engine?
time, right? I mean, so that's kind of the problem that I was alluding to, which is you've got somebody who's been doing what they've been doing the way they've been doing it for years, and it's been fine. This is the person who probably bought the yellow page ads, right? And the tools that you just mentioned, I mean, they're every day they come out, right? I mean, every conference we go to, you find a whole bunch of new ones you never heard of, and by the time you go to the next conference, they're already come and gone. And there's just, between the plugins for your website and just all the different things you can do, just through ChatGPT, as you mentioned, and then beyond that, it's changed your ability to market, but you've got to have somebody in the driver's seat who's actively looking for what's next. Where do we go with this? What are we building towards? And frankly, I don't think there's a lot of strategy for most of our industry. There's some good ones out there, but I think it's surprising, when you're looking at some of these businesses that we deal with that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and even those guys have, sometimes they don't have the best website considering their size.
What do you see the great ones doing? Like, what do you go to the kickoffs and you go to the great conferences, and what do you think, whether they use our services or somebody else or whatever, like what would you suggest looking at the field would be some things that are must do's in today's, because I always say, like, if we're selling technology, we kind of should look like a technology company, but like, what do you see the best ones doing?
Well, first of all, they have somebody dedicated to that job, right? They have a marketing specialist who isn't, the marketing specialist, lease specialist, also sales manager, office manager, carrying wearing 10 hats. You've got to have somebody whose job it is, who's trained in that, who may have done that in other jobs, who came out of college possibly with a background in that, or if not, then it certainly has some really good social media experience, some real and not just a resume, stuff that you can see, stuff that you can find online, examples of it. And I see a lot of companies moving to when they hit a certain level, they'll start bringing that outside talent in. Just because we're copier industry, printer industry, technology industry, doesn't mean everybody who works for us has to have grown up in this industry. And I think there's a lot of benefit sometimes to going outside and finding the expertise you need. And certainly in marketing, that's a great example where you can do that, because you don't necessarily want somebody who spent their whole life in our world. You want somebody who's, maybe been around a little bit and seen how it's done in different industries, how it's done at different companies at different levels. Certainly, I know, Aaron, your experience at some of these different companies. You were at big ones, you were at little ones, you were at dealers, you get a lot of perspective, right? And you start to be able to look at your situation and say, what do we need to do? How do we move this forward? How do we, to your point where you were talking about, integrate some sales and marketing so that they can maybe be cohesive instead of almost operating like different companies, right? Like the objective is at the end is the company wants to sell more. The company wants, the revenue to increase. When you get to that point, you've got to make that investment. You've got to bring that person on. You've got to pay somebody decent money to come on board. They've got to have a different level skill set. And, they've got to be open to looking at different alternatives that maybe your company never considered before. There's a lot
Yeah,
out,
I know.
there's a lot out there,
Yeah, I agree. I think that having like a different point of view, like we were talking about before we started recording the meeting here, like back in the early 2000s, you could create one video, put a logo on it, put it on everyone's website, and it'd be okay, right? It's like, hey, I'm doing marketing, and that's changing. Obviously it's changed a lot. How do you see other partners supporting the dealers? Like, are the OEMs coming to the table with something different? Are the service providers doing something different? Like, where are you seeing that kind of happen in the marketplace, or not?
Well, I see a lot of OEMs, vendor partners, companies like you partnering with, I mean, you got something with ConnectWise, right? And
Yeah.
you just launched that recently. And that's kind of in that vein where, you're partnering up your services with somebody the dealer's already using, right? And you're trying to bring that together a little bit better. And that's a win for everybody, because ConnectWise will get, the people I would assume would be better trained in what's available to ConnectWise, how to sell in that environment a little better. And so there's partnerships, that I think dealers make, and some, they use resources through a lot of their partners, their vendor partners, who will build programs around it. Some of them will be sales programs, some of them will just be marketing programs, a lot of them have rebate programs, right? But there's all these programs that dealers have with their vendors, depending on who the vendor is, where they'll provide them everything from just basic brochures and simple old school marketing material up to some higher level support, some integration, some, helping keep their websites updated. There's plenty of companies, I think you guys do it as well, where you run their websites, right? You keep them, keep everything up to date, make sure all the current products are on there, old stuff gets taken off. And that's, it's a lot to keep up with. So partnering up, and leaning on your vendors, I think is really something that the dealers do quite a bit.
The one thing we've seen is that today's the industry we're in, let's call it the tech sector, technology resellers, they've got multiple vendors. And so if we go back to the olden days, it was one vendor that kind of gave you all this stuff. And now what we're finding, Andy, is that they may get stuff from this vendor and stuff from that vendor and stuff from this vendor. So the vendors are actually fighting for shelf space in terms of the marketing messaging. And sometimes it doesn't align with maybe the branding or the messaging of the reseller. And anyway, I'm just, as we talk to like our customers, sometimes they're looking for somebody to sort through and kind of make a logical salad, if I could call it that, of all the messages that align with kind of what they do. So then I'm going to triangle here and a square here and a circle here, because it's tough that not everybody has time to go through all of the stuff that the vendors have. And anyway, just something that we know.
Well, to your point, all the vendors have a vested interest, right?
They do.
If I'm a Sharp dealer and a Konica and Rico dealer, they're all going to give me resources.
Yeah.
But as a parent, I want to play nice. I want all my children to play nice. And back, I think in the day, they used to do things like that where they would take on a lot of the vendor resources, and that was, it was a, I think it was more important to the dealer to be known as a Canon dealer or a Ricoh dealer or a, whatever brand, Konica Minolta, all, they were all very proud of the brands, and now it's switched and they're the brand, right? I'm the brand.
Thank you for
I
saying
don't
that.
care what I'm selling. My customer doesn't care what I'm selling. My guys are the brand. My logo is the one that they're calling, and it doesn't matter if it's Xerox, HP, Ricoh. It's just they're all my partners. I selected them. I vetted them, so they're good. But I'm your face, not these other companies. So that's kind of flipped over the years, and I think a lot more importance is now on the dealer brand. And so back to your website, right, and your sales force, you can't just have a couple copiers on your website anymore and expect that to carry you. You've got to have some good messaging. You got to keep it updated. Man, we've got a lot of work in our industry to do. There's a lot of bad websites out there, a lot of bad websites.
Well, and I would agree with you. Like, I think that is the big shift, right? Your Konica Minolta or your OEM brand only took you so far, but now it's the salespeople that are out in the field representing you and your business. And if you're a family-owned business and your name is on the door and you're out in the marketplace, that's the brand that you want to tell in that marketplace to your customers. And yes, I can support you with those various OEMs. So what we're seeing is that shift exactly. How are you turning the corner and now taking all your experience and that shift into these different services and now showcasing yourself as your business in the community, playing soccer with the kids, going to the same community places, and really investing specifically into that personalization of marketing. And that's where to your point, having a couple copiers and some generic OEM content isn't getting it done anymore.
I agree. You've got to paint a picture and show how and every vendor's got the differentiation message, right? We're all trying to go outside as an industry and not just be print. We're trying to diversify the product line. We're trying to go in all these different directions. And we've very subtly changed from being copier dealers to, I like to call them, office equipment resellers, technology resellers. I mean, we've got a lot of different words for them, but none of them are copier dealers anymore, right? I mean,
Right.
that's a thing in the past. That's just one little thing they do. They do managed IT. They do cybersecurity. They do, physical security with cameras. They'll do coffee and water. Like, there's just, whatever. Every dealer is unique, and they carry a huge portfolio of product. And copiers may be the biggest part of the revenue for that dealer, but certainly it's only a small portion of what they offer.
So only showing 9 copiers on your homepage, giving you a full suite MSP isn't a good idea. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think you can do better, and it's actually been quite frustrating for me with some of the dealers that have worked on their websites. It's funny because the brands disappear now. Some of them have gone the whole other direction to say we don't want any brands on there. We don't want them searching us, research. We want them just doing business with us, and we'll help them figure out what brand they need. And so you've seen the brands disappear off a lot of those sites, which for me makes it sometimes challenging because I like to do a little background on a dealer and find out, well, what do you
Right.
sell? And to that point, like if you're a Ricoh customer and you for whatever reason don't like your Ricoh dealer, you would be able to go and look for other Ricoh dealer in your market. And now I think a lot of dealers have done away with that, and they may not come up, right? It's a different approach.
Yeah, you know what? One of the other things that I see, I don't know if you see the same thing out there too, is that with this transition out of print into cybersecurity, IT services, water, whatever it is, right? I think it's more and more important now that even as a sales rep in these dealerships, if I was a copier dealer and now I'm offering IT services or cybersecurity, my online presence should represent my authority, experience, and understanding of that space specifically. And I think a lot of the times there's a little bit of a miss there where it's lightly explained on a website or in a brochure, and you expect the salesperson to then be able to go out and articulate this value proposition about how complex and how great you are. And as a buyer and user type person, you're feeling that disconnect and understand, like, do you really know what you're doing, Andy, or not? Like, because I don't think you do. It doesn't look like you do online.
Well, and it's hard. You add to the fact that like that customer is going to go right to your website after your rep leaves to see who you are and what you really do, and does that match up? As the owner, you've got and it's always been like this, right? You're at you just whatever the dealer is doing, whatever that rep is doing, they're representing you, but you're just sort of sitting back hoping they say the right thing, hoping their messaging is consistent with your messaging, hoping that they're showing the types of products and saying the things you want them to say to represent you well. And that comes to training, that comes to creating, having a program, a lot of stuff that you guys do, which is, helping these reps understand how to talk about the benefits of the company, why we're, who we are, why you would want to work with us, what kind of products we offer, we sell. There's a lot of training that goes on, and it's just I think back to my training, it was just sort of go ride with this guy, and then go ride with that guy, and that was like, I learned some good habits, I learned some bad habits, but at that point the rep, and you wonder how much that still goes on. I think probably a lot. It's training reps is an ongoing process. It's hard, especially because the replacement of these guys is nonstop. That's one thing that's never changed in our industry, right? Is just that finding people and then keeping people is one of the hardest things. And one of your arguments, I'm sure you hear from your clients is I don't want to pay to train all these guys because then they're going to leave, right? That's your biggest fear is like, so they're kind of a lot of times stuck in this double-edged sword where, well, if I train him, he's going to leave. If I don't train him, he's going to suck. So what do I do? Right?
No, you made a comment in one of the consortium calls recently that you were at a kickoff and there were some reps that were making $1 million, and I made a note of that. And I think a lot of people, I always say, sales is both the highest and the lowest paying profession on the planet, depending on how good you are. What were those million? I don't know if you had a chance to interact with people who were making $1 million in this industry, but what were they like, if I may ask? Like, how old were they? We don't mention any names or whatever, but what did they like? Talk to us a bit about them and how you think they may have made that much money in this industry.
So I think culture is a big part of that. If you've got a company that is, let's just say, a machine, they've got a look, their reps all look the same way. This company I think I was referring to, we'll just say it was POA. It was, and these guys, they're a lot of athletes, a lot of just, I would say, type A, very competitive people and young, and they're all pitted against each other. They're all, driving the nicer car than the guy next to them or the woman next to them. And, they're all wearing the nicest clothes that they can. And then and they all notice each other, right? When I've gone to these events and they're all looking at each other up and down and, it's the culture. They all, at that company, I think you feel, pretty obsolete if you're not up there vying and being one of the top dogs at that company. And, I've gone on a couple of events with them where it's, I was on an incentive trip and there were probably over 10 guys that were, and they were young. They were mostly under 30. And these were just sales reps that's banging on doors, but they motivate each other, they drive each other, and they want to beat each other. So, it's in a lot of these places, I think that competitive nature is real. If you can make that work for you in a sales organization, ringing that bell, that gets people fired up. That makes them, if I just got pushed to second, I'm going to go out there and work a little harder to get right back to first. And I'm not going to let that person beat me a second month in a row. Salespeople are competitive. You don't just take all the other stuff out of it. You don't like to lose because if you lose, that means you didn't get the deal, you didn't get paid. But the funniest thing is I think back to my days, sometimes I would work harder. If I was just consistent and worked hard all the time, I would have made a great living. But those contests, those things that pitted me against my peers, those were what got me really fired up. And they could be giving away a pen, but if I walked away with that pen and I'm the one who got it, I've got the pen, right? Like I'm the best. I was number one. And salespeople love that. They love the recognition. They love the gold star next to their name. They love going on the president's trips. And these are things you do to motivate them. I think it does start with culture. You've got to have a type. You've got to have good leadership there. You've got to have great examples. You also have to be willing to help and train them and get them up to that point. Like they don't just do that by accident. You've got to teach them these habits, right? So they don't come out of the box like that.
I think and I think the dealers, at least that we're talking to that do fit that mold, they're making the investment back in the business, back into their sales teams, into the culture, into their marketing, and making sure that they're establishing what a good foundation looks like so that they can not have as much turnover and be able to invest their money back into the business growth of the organization.
These guys are business people. I know when a local guy here, He's billing over 7 figures, and he's got his own secretary. Company wasn't going to get him secretary. He was too busy, so he paid his own secretary. She comes in, she works for him, right? But she's got a cubicle in their office, and you get to a certain point. If you're, he's running his territory like he's running his own business.
Right.
And you get these people, and they're out there, and when you get them, you keep them. I mean, that guy's been there forever, but it, you want to do what you can do to enable these guys. You want to train them. You want to get them up to speed. You don't want to, I mean, I heard this great quote. I was just at BPC. I can't remember who said it, but this is my favorite one. It was, the only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them and having them stay. It was Henry Ford. And I wish I could remember who said that, whose presentation that came out of at BPCA, but that was a great quote, right? Because I mean, that's what all these guys that we're talking about, these dealerships, they're all going through that. It's like, I gotta train them. I don't want to spend the money. I don't want to do it because they're gonna leave. But so if you don't, the alternative, you don't train them and they fall behind. You get your lunch eaten by your competitors in that territory. So what's the difference? It's an open territory. You gotta spend the money. You've got to invest in your people. And now we're at this point where there's all these tools out there that first of all are available that nobody knows about because they're like this trying to sell, trying to do their job, but somebody in that company should be looking at technology that would make them more effective, more efficient. I mean, you get a lot of that in peer groups. When you go to the peer groups, maybe one dealer uses something and they share it, which is great. But these dealers need to keep their eyes open for these tools because AI has changed so much. We mentioned ChatGPT before. There's so much you can do with it, but you got to have a plan. You have to, again, back to the consistency, getting my message out. I really probably don't want everybody using it on their own. I probably want to have some sort of training and process. I want to show everybody how we want them to use it, right? And so that, again, that consistent voice, I'm building an image of an impression of my company. Everybody's saying something similar or similar things, and everyone's heads on the same, facing the same way. That's what you want. But these tools are out there. Their reps are going to start using them if they're not already. I'm sure they already are. But the dealers, I think, they're all kind of looking at this like, what do I do? Some are way ahead of this. Some are probably talking to you guys right now and others, but some of them are just sitting there doing things like they've always done. And this AI stuff is changing things very quickly. I mean, I'm sick of hearing about it, but there's a reason we're hearing about it. It's everywhere. And it's just, I mean, I use it all day long for a million different things, whether it's editing a document, whether it's helping me write a proposal, whether it's, going through press items and having it summarize some things and taking notes for me. I mean, it's just endless, the different things you can do.
Oh, Andy. So here's a scenario. So I'm running a sales coaching session with a dealership, a smaller one that you may say, hey, they may not have everything in place. So there's 9 of them, and I said, okay, here's a scenario. You're trying to book an appointment with this person at this account, a new logo, new contact. I'll give you guys 15 minutes. Send me an email. We'll pop them up on the screen. Well, what did I get? I got 8 different emails. A couple with attachments that we know are taboo based on today's filters.
Yeah.
Nobody used any AI to create the thing. It wasn't personalized, was too long. And so, I get you said too that the culture, and sometimes this falls back on the sales manager, which I think that's sometimes a missing link that we see in a lot of sales teams. Not to say the sales managers aren't capable, but are we coaching the sales manager with the newer methodologies to kind of lead the team, or are they managing numbers, versus people? But if we stopped, this is an example why we think there's turnover is, our reps, I think, we can have all the tech stack and all the new stuff, but if they can't do the fundamentals like secure an appointment or handle basic objections or, tell the company story. If someone listening right now lined up their 50 reps or 3 reps, whatever they did, and said, hey, tell me why someone should buy from us, or what is our story, or how would you handle that objection? And there's not continuity in the way they do that. They got a bunch of individuals, and I would argue not really a sales team. And what I've seen, you mentioned the culture at one of the dealerships, and it was inspiring, by the way, to hear it was younger people making $1 million too. It wasn't somebody sitting on a bunch of major accounts like
No, these guys were hunters, man. They were out there and they were most of them were under 30, if I remember correctly.
So I mean that's got to be inspiring for our listeners.
Yeah, made me think about selling, going back.
So Andy, okay, so we've talked about sales, marketing, and culture. So someone watching this episode right now, dealer owner out there, what are some advice, pro tips that you could give someone to get started, just to start focusing on those three things? Like what are some areas that you think that they should start to do?
Oh, certainly get yourself in a peer group if you're not in one already. Just I go to a lot of these, all the different ones for the most part, and it's the one consistent thing about them is it's just the sharing of information with your peers, right? Like you've got friends that you'll make, and I mean it takes you everywhere from, you know, well, it's just the basics of if somebody made a mistake and learned a big fat lesson, expensive lesson, and they share it at the group, you're not going to make that mistake again, right? You can it helps you avoid the landmines. It helps you maybe identify new technology, new like we were just at I mentioned I was at BPCA. I was at a couple weeks before American Co-op, and it was at Function 4 dealer down in Houston, and they had their one of their people get up and do a whole presentation on how they're using CEO Juice, which is a product that a lot of companies use for ECI, e-automate. And it was just really neat to me that CEO Juice wasn't at this meeting. They weren't a sponsor of this meeting, but these guys had unlocked some things in it and found some real benefit to it. And they wanted to do a presentation and show everybody else. There was another presentation later, similar thing, another company, but just like that's the kind of thing that they're doing at some of these peer groups. So you get to sit through some meetings, you get, maybe some exposure to some high level people. You might get a President Laura spoke from Konica Minolta at that one. So it's great. You can sit there and ask some high level questions. At BPCA, Jim Caridi was there. People were able to ask him questions. But when it comes down to it, it's these little tools that other dealers started talking about. And you didn't have to deal with CEO Juice doing a big commercial about it. It was just here's how we're using it. And he's pulling up spreadsheets and he's pulling up slides, and he's walking them through some billing integrations that they found in there that they thought were really useful. And it's one thing when the vendor shows you, tells you something, and you're just I'm a copier guy. I don't I'm not listening until it means something to me. But all of a sudden these guys were all like, oh, that's what that means. And when it gets to the end and he's like, here's how much money we saved. And now everybody's eyes are like that. And I'm sure there's some people that are going to be calling CEO Juice to find out about that module, right? Because it's there. They're all using it. They just didn't know they had it. But that's the kind of example. I think these peer groups are really, they're so helpful. Just leaning on your peers. Somebody might tell you, look, if you're getting into cyber, here's three things you should probably worry about because we had a big problem. Or I mean, you know how expensive it is to just get into IT and be successful at it. A lot of people learn some expensive lessons. You should benefit from that because these guys are all sharing their success stories and their misery with each other. And so if you're not in a peer group, I think that's one of the first things I would recommend. It just exposes you to a different level. There's a lot of people out there doing things. The same or differently. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You've got a lot of support around you that you may not, you may not have ever considered before.
Okay, so then that dovetails into the next one, right? So if you're at a peer group and someone's talking about it when you're not in the room, that's word of mouth marketing. So what is your marketing advice for dealers out there today?
Don't cheap out. Spend the money. Find something that works for you. Go around and just look at a bunch of the websites, and you'll start to get it, right? They're frustrating. You have to remember why a customer is going to come to your website. It's going to be because they looked you up because they were looking for a specific product and they found you, or because maybe your sales rep walked in and cold called them and they want to see who you are. So, if it's either one of those, here's your opportunity. Someone's looking at you for a reason. And if you've got a website that you haven't updated in 10 years, 5, 10, 20 years, what's on there? How old is it? Right. And people can tell when something looks old. It's if your website is antiquated, what does it say about your company? You're supposed to be this advanced technology company. A great example of one I saw. It's the first one that popped into my head. Flex redid their website last year, Flex Technology Group. And, Flex is a good example of a company that needed to because they started as, one company and then a bunch of companies and they just kept adding. And it's kind of how their website was. They ran all the individual companies ran their own websites. So there was no voice, no consistent voice of the company. And then bam, last year, major and then second of all, it was an older site. It looked great probably 10 years ago when they built it. But now when you see all the new sites and they're so visually appealing and things are moving around in the background and so it looked old, but now all of a sudden they spent a little money. They got a new marketing person. They've invested in the company. And you can see the changes, right? And right off the bat, that website looks slick. It looks polished, and and you don't have to be a big dealer to have a great website. That's the other thing, right? That's the great equalizer is that your rep walks in, hands a card. You could be from a $5 million dealer and the other dealer is a $100 million dealer. If his website sucks and they go to you and go to them, that
100%.
right? The customer doesn't know. And
People,
it makes you look better, even though they may be bigger, more successful. You look like the better company, and that's one thing you can do. That's a voice speaking when you're not there to talk for yourself.
100%. Andy, look at your operation. Okay. I mean, kudos to you for the reach and touches you have. And I
Thank
know
you.
you report up into Jake there as your,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. You guys are what, two people, but the reach you have through your marketing and,
yeah,
how you've migrated to video now and podcasts and using the methodologies so that you're top of mind. When someone wants to get visibility with dealers or OEMs, they know come to Andy, right? You're a vehicle because you're in front of them with content. I would argue is knowledge led, not promotional led, yada yada. But that point you make, Aaron, he makes about the little guy can now knock
Yeah.
out the big guy because the olden days, when I was a dealer, it was all about investing in the demo room because the customer would come in for the demo. Remember,
Right.
guys?
yeah.
Well, I would argue, okay, I don't know how many customers are coming in for a demo these days, but your new demo room is your website.
Well, right. And I also think too, just kind of rounding out a lot of the stuff that we've been
For
talking.
recruiting too, Aaron, for recruiting. Like that's the whole other side. We're selling.
Oh, definitely. I didn't even think of that. But sure, if I'm thinking of coming to work for you, and I'm gonna, if I'm a copier rep
Yeah.
and I'm trained, right? Because somebody trained me and I went and got a better job somewhere. I'm gonna look at your site, you, and if you look like you've got or even if I'm just out of college, even more important, right? And I'm looking for that first career. Do I want to go with somebody who's got like a 10, 15-year-old website and it's just blah, or do I go to this one that looks like this really sophisticated techie company with an edge to it, and the
Yeah.
people on there look like they're just having a great time working there, and customers are saying nice things, and they've got, oh, by the way, tons of really good reviews, Google reviews or whatever else you can get out there. That's another thing we didn't even talk about is having somebody, and again, back to your marketing, you need somebody who's on top of this, making sure that those reviews, those things that people are putting on Google are nice, or being, and if they're not nice or Yelped or whatever they are, wherever you're finding them, you've got to address them, and you always get a chance to respond to those if you see them. But if you're not watching for them,
Andy, this is why we think you mentioned earlier having, one person dedicated. Candidly, we don't think one person can do it all these days. And that's our argument. But not every dealer, it has somebody. So this is what we're trying to do anyways, complement because it's whether it's reviews or video or email strategy, SEO, AI, like it's not, making a brochure like the 80s and 90s the reps hand out anymore. But
well,
Well, let's face it too, Andy. Like you see it, you said it on the $1 Million Club, right? The customer's getting younger, right? The people are getting and they're looking for more. They're looking for what's the work experience going to be like? How much money can I make? What's in it for me? What do I get out of it? The same thing applies to the client, the end user. What's in it for me? Why do I want to talk to you? What do I get out of it? And that's why that brand component that we've been talking about is so important because now, I've done a lot of work in private equity. Your brand, it becomes a hugely valuable and an increase in stakeholder value if you're looking to liquidate your company or make a move, right? And so by not investing back into that, you're actually losing money, right? So if you can bring something that to the table that speaks to why you should work there, what you can do, and how you can be successful in this space, not only from a client perspective, but from an employee perspective, I think that speaks a lot to what you were talking about with culture and showcasing the culture about why it's important to come and work in this business and how successful you can be in whatever facet it is, sales, operations, or what have you.
do you think that recruiting ties into turnover? So in other words, if our website looks outdated, do we get maybe not an A-class candidate, which we try to train and doesn't, you know what I mean? We see the cycle
It's a vicious circle, right?
if you're gonna do things, pardon the expression, but if you're gonna do it half-ass, you're gonna get half-ass results.
Right.
hey,
And back to what you just said, even about just it's hard even just having one person. It's impossible because the amount of resources you have available to you now it's just exploding. It's just there's so many tools and you gotta kind of pay attention to it because like we're already seeing the last 5, 10 years how hard it is to get into a building, to go cold call, to go hand out cards, to go do the job that we've always done as an industry. So you look at big cities, someone like New York, they've had to completely evolve and change how they market. And if your rep isn't able to go in there and knock on doors, how are you going to get in front of that customer? Well, now you're going to maybe lean on AI, you're going to lean on marketing programs, you're going to lean on email, right? Which nobody ever, email is really tough, but if you get a good program that is getting results, then it's worth it. But just sitting there doing things the way we've always done them, I think those days are numbered. I don't think you're going to be able to sell like that effectively for much longer, if you can even now.
Now, Aaron, I got to tell you, so we're playing a par three, Andy and I, at the yes Charity Golf Classic. Okay.
Yeah.
Andy's taking his 7th shot on a par three.
Smart, right? Take a couple places to get there. Don't go all there in once.
I'd already emptied 3 balls into the so-called river, so we're not going to win the tournament. We already know this. And I said to Andy, there's got to be a good side to you in golf. And
there's not. Finishing.
I think I found out what it was with this awesome tournament that you're involved in. Maybe you could speak a bit about that.
Sure. Well, thank you. We'll wrap up with this. I guess we're doing a big charity golf tournament. It's been my longtime ambition to do another charity. I've been doing them for years with a lot of other people, but I wanted to kind of build one on my own. And I love golf, and I suck at it, but I love playing. So got some help from Bob Goldberg, from Kevin Van Cannell at UTEC, and Mark Rice at IBPI, and we've pulled together a nice little tournament. It's going to be up at Oakland Hills Country Club in August. We've still got a few spots left, not many. One of the 2 courses we had is already sold out, and the other one will sell out. We've got some hotel information. All the OEMs, all the A3 OEMs are sponsoring. It's the first event. I think they're all going to be under one roof since maybe NAMDA, as far as I can tell. I can't remember the last time all the A3 OEMs were together in one place, but we're very honored to have all these companies jump in and support it. The money's going to go to the American Cancer Society in the name of Sandy Lowry from Applied Innovation. We're going to donate in her name, and just everybody's jumped in and just been so amazing with this. So yeah, August 18th, pack your bags, and we'll see you guys in Michigan.
Awesome. Hey, buddy, I think that the response you're getting says a lot about your character and your personal brand. I think people really like you, and kudos for what you're doing. And by the way, if you're still listening, Andy wasn't taking a 7th shot on par 3. I'm just setting him up to take your money if he does play golf with you.
Sadly, I think most people I've golfed with would certainly believe that I've had a 7 on a par 3.
Hey, listen, if you've golfed with Bob Goldberg, you have to hit your shot and watch his shot at the same time. So
you do. But Bob is one of my favorite people to golf with, and
that's right.
And he does it right. He doesn't keep score. He just has fun, and that's probably what I should start doing a little more. But yeah, this was great. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Andy. We appreciate your perspective and your ideas, and thanks a lot for participating.
Yeah, thank you, and we'll set that up. I'll come up and visit you guys up on the other side of the lake, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us, buddy.
All right, thanks, boys.